Most people think they know Portugal. They see the Instagram posts from Lisbon's colorful tiles, the tourist crowds in Porto, and the overpriced beachfront cafes in the Algarve. But what if I told you there's a completely different Portugal where people live incredibly fulfilling lives on just $600 a month? Not surviving, thriving. This isn't some romantic fantasy or digital nomad pipe dream. This is real life in rural Portugal, where your biggest decision of the day might be whether to have your third espresso at 11 a.m. or wait until noon. The Portugal I'm about to show you exists in forgotten villages where rent costs less than your Netflix subscription back home, where neighbors still check on each other without being asked. You won't find these places in travel guides because, frankly, most guidebook writers never venture beyond the main cities. They miss the 75-year-old baker who still fires up his wood oven at 4 a.m., the local festivals where everyone from toddlers to grandparents dances until midnight, and the informal network of favors and friendships that makes $600 feel like $2,000 anywhere else. This isn't poverty tourism. This is about understanding how an entire culture has figured out that happiness doesn't require a massive salary. So forget everything you think you know about European cost of living. Forget the myth that you need a six-figure income to enjoy life. What you're about to see will challenge every assumption you have about what it means to live well in 2025. Portugal sits on the edge of Europe like a bookmark in a history novel, and most people only read the first few pages. While everyone knows about the age of exploration and the colonial empire, few understand how this shaped modern Portugal into something completely unique among European nations. After the 1974 Carnation Revolution ended 48 years of dictatorship, Portugal had to reinvent itself almost overnight. The result? A country that embraces both tradition and change in ways that create opportunities most outsiders never see. The geography tells the real story. While coastal cities like Lisbon and Porto absorbed most of the post-revolution development and tourism boom, vast interior regions remained largely untouched. Alentejo, covering one-third of the country, has a population density that would make Montana look crowded. Beira Interior, stretching along the Spanish border, contains medieval villages where you can buy a house for the price of a used car in California. These aren't abandoned ghost towns. They're functioning communities where life costs a fraction of what you'd pay elsewhere. But here's what makes these places special. They're not stuck in the past, trying to preserve some museum version of rural life. Internet speeds in many villages match or exceed what you'll find in major American cities, thanks to Portugal's national fiber optic program. Local councils actively encourage remote workers and retirees to move in, offering everything from streamlined residency paperwork to language classes taught by actual locals, not overpriced international schools. The weather. While everyone obsesses over Portugal's famous 300 days of sunshine, what they don't mention is how this plays out in practice. Rural Portugal gives you 4 distinct seasons without the extreme temperatures that make other European countries unbearable. Summer highs rarely crack 35 degrees Celsius, 95 degrees Celsius, and winter lows seldom drop below 5 degrees, 41 degrees. Air conditioning is optional. Heating bills are minimal, and you can grow vegetables year-round with minimal effort. Meanwhile, the traditional industries that sustained these regions for centuries – cork production, sheep farming, olive oil, wine – continue generating enough economic activity to support local businesses without creating the inflated prices that come with tourist economies. This creates something rare in modern Europe – authentic communities where locals and newcomers coexist because everyone benefits from the same low-cost, high-quality lifestyle. Maria opens her kitchen window at 6:30 a.m., not because she has to, but because she wants to catch the bread truck that rumbles through Aldeia Velha twice a week. At 67, she moved here from Lisbon 3 years ago with her teacher's pension of $800 per month. Her story isn't unique. It's become so common that locals have a term for it – the city escape. Her daily routine would puzzle most Americans used to rushing everywhere. After collecting her fresh bread, still warm, $0.85 for a loaf that would cost $4 in Lisbon, she walks to the village fountain where 3 other women have gathered. Not by appointment, not through social media planning, but because this is simply what happens every morning. They discuss everything from whose tomatoes are ripening fastest to which neighbor needs help with their roof repairs. Information flows through these informal networks faster than any internet connection. By 9 a.m., Maria's at the weekly market in the nearest town, 15 minutes away by local bus that costs $1.20. Here's where the $600 monthly budget starts making sense. Fresh vegetables from local farms, $8 for a week's worth that includes seasonal specialties you can't buy in supermarkets. Local cheese, still made by families who've been perfecting their recipes for generations, $3.50 per kilogram versus $12 for imported alternatives. Olive oil pressed from groves visible from the market square, $4 per liter for quality that sells for $20 in gourmet shops elsewhere. But the real secret isn't just the prices, it's the relationships. After 3 years, Maria knows which vendor saves the best peaches for her, who grows the spiciest peppers, and which cheesemaker will let her taste 5 different varieties before deciding. These aren't commercial transactions. They're community connections that turn shopping into social time and guarantee you're getting the best value for your money. Afternoons in rural Portugal follow a rhythm that modern urban life has forgotten. Lunch happens between 12:30 and 2:30, not because restaurants close, but because this is when people prefer to eat. The local café where Maria meets friends serves a full meal: soup, main course, dessert, coffee for $7.50. The same meal in Lisbon would cost $15 In Paris or Rome, double that. But more importantly, lunch isn't rushed. Conversations happen, plans get made, problems get solved. The village itself provides entertainment that doesn't cost anything but rewards you with experiences money can't buy elsewhere. Evening walks through cobblestone streets where every house tells a story. Sunset views from hilltops that remain uncrowded because no tour buses can navigate the narrow roads. Swimming holes in rivers that locals have enjoyed for centuries but never appear on tourist maps. Maria's monthly expenses tell the complete story. Rent for a 2-bedroom stone house with a garden, $150. Utilities including high-speed internet, $45. Food from local sources, $120. Transportation via buses and occasional car sharing, $25. Entertainment, from village festivals to regional cultural events, $15. Healthcare through Portugal's public system essentially free with her residency status. Total, $355, leaving $445 for savings, travel, or simply the security of knowing she can afford unexpected expenses without stress. This isn't scripted simplicity or forced minimalism. This is what happens when a community's cost structure reflects actual living needs rather than speculative real estate markets and tourist inflation. Portuguese coffee culture makes Italian espresso traditions look casual. Walk into any village cafe at 7:30 a.m., and you'll witness a ritual that hasn't changed in decades but somehow feels more relevant now than ever. The counter fills with men heading to work, women returning from market, and retirees who treat their morning bica, espresso, like a sacred appointment. 0.70 gets you coffee that would cost $3 in Amsterdam, $5 in Zurich, and probably $8 in Manhattan if you could find the same quality. But here's what outsiders miss. The coffee is just the entry fee to a social institution. Stand at the counter, never sit for a quick coffee, that's for tourists, and you become part of conversations that range from local politics to whose grandson just got married in Canada. The cafe owner knows everyone's usual order, family updates, and professional concerns. This isn't small talk, it's community maintenance performed over caffeine. The pastry situation deserves its own documentary. Every village has at least one pasteleria where bakers start work at 4 a.m. producing pastéis de nata, bolas de Berlim, and regional specialties that vary every few kilometers. 1.20 gets you a custard tart that rivals anything in Lisbon's famous shops, made by someone who learned the recipe from their grandmother and adjusts it based on seasonal milk quality from local cows. Try explaining that level of authenticity to someone paying $4 for a mass-produced croissant in a Berlin airport. Local eating culture operates on principles that accidentally solve problems urban foodies spend fortunes trying to achieve. Seasonal eating isn't a lifestyle choice. It's automatic when your vegetables come from farms within 20 kilometers. Organic food isn't labeled as such because pesticides cost money small farmers don't want to spend. Slow food isn't a movement. It's just how things work when your meat comes from animals you can visit while they're still alive. The economics become absurd when you compare them to major cities. A full dinner at the local Tasca, starter, main course, dessert, wine, coffee rarely exceeds $12. The wine, incidentally, often comes from vineyards you can see from the restaurant window, made by families who sell most of their production to export companies for 10 times what you pay, drinking it at the source. Your 3-bottle of local wine represents the same quality that sells for $30 in New York wine shops, minus the shipping, import duties, and retail markup. But the real revelation is how food connects people in ways that urban restaurant culture, despite all its sophistication, can't replicate. During harvest season, neighbors share excess fruit and vegetables not through formal exchanges but because abundance is meant to be shared. Someone's olive harvest becomes everyone's olive oil. A successful fishing trip turns into impromptu neighborhood dinners. Hunting season brings wild boar and venison to tables where the hunters' families eat alongside urban refugees who've never held a gun. Festival food culture takes this community connection to another level entirely. Village festivals happen throughout the year, celebrating everything from patron saints to harvest seasons, and the food preparation becomes a weeks-long community project. 50 women collaborate on desserts using recipes passed down through generations. Men tend grills that cook enough meat to feed anyone who shows up. Children help prepare vegetables while learning techniques they'll use for the rest of their lives. The total cost for attending these festivals? Usually nothing beyond whatever voluntary contribution you make to cover ingredients. The experience? Impossible to replicate in any commercial setting because it's based on genuine community pride rather than profit margins. Dating in rural Portugal operates according to rules that would confuse anyone whose romantic experience comes from dating apps and urban nightlife. Traditional gender roles still exist here, but they're evolving in ways that create interesting opportunities and occasional confusion for newcomers trying to understand local customs. Portuguese women in rural communities tend to be remarkably independent and financially savvy, often running local businesses, managing family finances, and making major household decisions while maintaining cultural expectations around family and social appearances. They're not impressed by flashy displays of wealth, partly because everyone knows everyone else's actual financial situation, making pretense impossible. For foreign men moving to rural Portugal, the dating landscape presents unique challenges and advantages. Local women appreciate genuine interest in Portuguese culture and language over superficial charm or attempts to impress with foreign wealth. Learning to participate in community events, understanding family dynamics, and showing respect for local traditions matter more than expensive dinners or designer clothes. Partly because expensive dinners and designer clothes would stand out in communities where authenticity is valued over ostentation. The age demographics in many rural villages skew older, which creates interesting social dynamics. Young Portuguese women often move to cities for education and career opportunities, leaving a generation gap that affects everything from local businesses to community events. This means newcomers in their 30s and 40s might find themselves among the younger residents, automatically included in social groups that handle village organizing and decision-making. Traditional courtship customs still influence how relationships develop, even when people meet through modern means. Family approval matters, not because parents control their adult children's decisions, but because small communities function better when everyone gets along. Sunday family lunches remain important social institutions where partners get evaluated by extended family networks that include several generations of opinions and advice. Nightlife in rural Portugal means something completely different from urban club culture. Social gathering happens around festivals, community events, and seasonal celebrations that might last until sunrise, but rarely involve the kind of anonymous hookup culture common in cities. People meet through shared activities, volunteer work for local events, hobby groups, sports clubs, or simply through the natural social mixing that happens when everyone shops at the same market and drinks coffee at the same café. The economic aspects of rural Portuguese dating reflect the overall cost advantages of village life. Dates involve activities that cost little or nothing: walks through historic areas, attending free cultural events, sharing meals at local restaurants where $20 covers dinner for 2 people. The pressure to spend large amounts of money to demonstrate romantic interest simply doesn't exist in communities where everyone knows that financial flash usually indicates poor judgment rather than success. Modern relationship dynamics get complicated by the mixture of traditional expectations and contemporary opportunities. Rural Portuguese society respects women who work and manage their own finances, but also maintains cultural preferences for family stability and children. Young couples often face decisions about whether to stay in villages where life is affordable but career options are limited, or move to cities where opportunities increase along with living costs. For expats navigating this landscape, success often depends on genuinely integrating into community life rather than trying to maintain outsider status while seeking romantic connections. Learning Portuguese beyond basic tourist phrases, participating in local traditions, and understanding regional cultural differences demonstrates the kind of commitment that rural communities value in potential long-term residents. The festival calendar in rural Portugal reads like a secret handbook for time travelers. While major cities celebrate the same international holidays everyone knows about, villages maintain celebration traditions that predate Christianity, survived centuries of political upheaval, and continue happening because communities decide they're worth preserving. Take the Festa dos Rapazes in Trás-os-Montes during December and January. Young men wear elaborate masks and costumes that look more like ancient Celtic rituals than modern Portuguese culture. They parade through villages collecting donations and performing traditional dances that anthropologists link to pre-Roman fertility celebrations. The entire event costs participants maybe $50 each for costume materials and contributions to communal meals, but provides cultural experiences that no amount of money could buy as a tourist. Spring brings dozens of flower festivals where entire villages get decorated with elaborate arrangements made from locally grown blooms. Not professional event planners, ordinary residents who spend weeks preparing displays that transform their communities into temporary art installations. The Festa da Flor in Funchal gets international attention, but similar events happen in mainland villages where tourists never venture. Participation costs nothing except time and creativity, but the results rival expensive garden shows elsewhere in Europe. Summer festival season reveals how rural Portuguese communities fund entertainment without corporate sponsorship or government subsidies. Local bands perform for free, knowing that good performances lead to paying gigs at weddings and private parties. Food vendors operate on thin margins because they're neighbors serving neighbors rather than businesses maximizing profit from strangers. Beer and wine cost what they cost at local stores because festivals aren't revenue opportunities, they're community celebrations. Religious festivals blend Catholic traditions with regional customs in ways that create unique experiences you won't find in guidebooks. The Festa de São João in rural areas involves traditions like jumping over bonfires, hitting people with plastic hammers, and wearing garlic necklaces that have nothing to do with official Catholic doctrine, but everything to do with local culture preserved across generations. Participating requires understanding local customs rather than paying entrance fees. Harvest festivals turn agricultural work into community celebrations that provide free entertainment while accomplishing necessary economic tasks. Grape harvests become weekend parties where everyone contributes labor in exchange for meals, wine, and socializing. Olive picking seasons turn into family reunions that span multiple days and include relatives traveling from cities to maintain connections with rural properties and traditions. Cork harvesting, which happens every 9 years from the same trees, becomes a festival celebrating one of Portugal's most distinctive industries. The music scene at these festivals showcases genres that exist nowhere else in Europe. Fado gets all the international attention, but rural Portugal maintains dozens of regional musical traditions. Minho folk music uses instruments and melodies that trace back to medieval times. Alentejo singing traditions involve group harmonies that sound like nothing you've heard elsewhere. Learning to participate in these musical traditions costs nothing but provides cultural education that universities would charge thousands to teach. Food competitions at local festivals operate on principles that would revolutionize expensive urban food scenes. Home cooks compete using ingredients they grew themselves. Recipes passed down through their families and techniques learned through practice rather than formal training. Winning brings community recognition rather than prize money, but the level of skill and creativity rivals what you'd find at high-end restaurants charging $100 per person. Winter festivals focus on preserving traditions during the season when agricultural work slows down. Communities organize traditional craft workshops where older residents teach younger people skills like pottery, weaving, and woodworking that sustained local economies for centuries. These aren't tourist attractions. They're cultural preservation efforts that provide practical education while maintaining community connections across generations. Living on $600 per month in rural Portugal isn't about extreme budgeting or sacrificing comfort. It's about understanding how local economics work when tourism and speculation have inflated basic living costs beyond reason. The numbers tell a story that challenges every assumption about European living expenses. Housing costs seem impossible until you understand the market dynamics. Villages throughout Alentejo and Beira Interior contain hundreds of properties where aging owners prefer reliable tenants to empty buildings. A 2-bedroom stone house with thick walls that provide natural insulation, original tile floors, and a small garden rents for $100 to $200 per month because landlords value stable, long-term tenants who maintain properties and contribute to community life. Purchase prices for similar properties range from $15,000 or $40,000, making homeownership accessible to anyone with modest savings and patience for renovations. Utility costs reflect Portugal's investment in modern infrastructure without urban premium pricing. High-speed fiber internet costs $25 to $30 per month throughout rural areas because the government treated broadband access as essential infrastructure rather than luxury service. Electricity bills average $25 to $35 monthly in well-insulated older homes that don't require air conditioning or extensive heating. Water costs rarely exceed $15 monthly, because most villages maintain their own supply systems without corporate markup. Transportation expenses stay minimal through a combination of public services and community cooperation. Regional bus networks connect even small villages to larger towns for $1.3 per trip, with monthly passes available for frequent travelers. Ride-sharing happens informally. Neighbors traveling to the same destinations regularly offer rides in exchange for fuel contributions. Many residents own older cars that serve perfectly for rural driving conditions, with insurance and maintenance costs significantly lower than urban areas where theft and accident rates inflate premiums. Food costs drop dramatically when you buy from local sources and adapt to seasonal availability. Weekly market shopping for fresh produce averages $15 to $20 for quantities that would cost 40 60s in supermarkets. Local meat from nearby farms costs $8 per kilogram for quality that sells for $20 to $25 in urban butcher shops. Fresh fish from coastal suppliers reaches inland markets at prices that reflect transportation costs rather than restaurant markup. Wine directly from local producers costs $2 to $4 per bottle for quality that exports for $15 to $25 internationally. Healthcare expenses become virtually zero through Portugal's National Health Service, which provides comprehensive coverage to legal residents regardless of employment status. Prescription medications cost a fraction of American prices, with many common drugs available for $25 that would cost $1,100 in the U.S. Dental care, while not fully covered, cost $20 to $40 for cleanings and basic procedures that would run $200 to $400 elsewhere in Europe. The hidden savings come from community support systems that reduce costs. You don't realize you're paying elsewhere. Neighbors help with home repairs, reducing professional service expenses. Community gardens provide fresh vegetables in exchange for shared labor. Tool sharing means you don't need to buy equipment used occasionally. Childcare happens through extended family and neighbor networks rather than expensive professional services. Entertainment and cultural activities cost almost nothing because they're community organized rather than commercially provided. Village festivals, cultural events, and social gatherings happen regularly without admission fees. Natural recreation, hiking, swimming, exploring historic sites requires only transportation costs to access. Libraries provide internet access, cultural programming, and social spaces without membership fees. The $600 monthly budget breaks down realistically as housing $150, utilities $70, food $150, transportation $50, healthcare $20, miscellaneous expenses $60, leaving $100 for savings or unexpected costs. This assumes someone living modestly but comfortably, participating in community life, and taking advantage of local cost efficiencies without sacrificing nutrition, safety, or social connection. But the real financial advantage comes from reduced pressure to earn maximum income. When living costs stay manageable, work becomes about personal satisfaction rather than survival necessity. Freelancers can choose projects based on interest rather than desperation. Retirees can enjoy their pensions without anxiety about inflation or healthcare costs. Entrepreneurs can start businesses focused on community value rather than investor returns. Getting around rural Portugal reveals transportation networks that prioritize accessibility over speed, community connection over efficiency, in ways that accidentally create better quality of life than urban transit systems designed for maximum throughput. The slower pace isn't a limitation. It's a feature that changes how you experience daily life. Regional bus networks connect even remote villages to larger towns through routes that follow logical patterns rather than profit optimization. Buses run twice daily in each direction on most routes, scheduled to accommodate market days, medical appointments, and social visits rather than rush-hour commuting. A monthly pass costs $35 to $45 and provides unlimited travel within regional networks that cover surprising distances. Drivers know regular passengers by name, hold buses for people running late, and provide informal customer service that includes directions, local information, and package delivery between villages. The bus stops themselves become social gathering points where people exchange information, catch up on community news, and coordinate shared activities. Waiting for transportation turns into social time rather than annoying delays because everyone expects buses to run on Portuguese time, which builds a buffer for conversations and spontaneous interactions that urban schedules don't accommodate. Cycling culture in rural areas operates differently from urban bike advocacy movements. People use bicycles for practical transportation rather than environmental statements or fitness goals. Older residents pedal to markets, cafes, and social visits at comfortable speeds that prioritize safety over speed. Electric bikes are becoming common among people who want extended range without excessive effort, with charging stations appearing at community centers and local businesses. Walking remains the primary transportation method for many daily activities because village layouts concentrate essential services within reasonable distances. The grocery store, cafe, church, post office, and community center cluster around central squares that stay accessible to residents with mobility limitations. Daily walks become social time when you encounter neighbors, stop for conversations, and participate in community life simply by moving through public spaces. Car ownership in rural Portugal follows different economics than urban areas. Older vehicles remain functional longer due to limited traffic, lower accident rates, and community mechanics who prioritize reliable repairs over expensive replacements. Insurance costs less because theft rates stay minimal and traffic congestion doesn't create high-stress driving conditions. Parking never costs money because space isn't scarce, and most properties include parking areas. Ride-sharing happens informally through community networks rather than commercial apps. People traveling to the same destinations regularly offer rides to neighbors, splitting fuel costs while providing social interaction during travel time. Church services, market days, and community events create predictable travel patterns that facilitate ride coordination without requiring digital platforms or formal scheduling. The regional train system, while limited, connects rural areas to major cities for longer trips that buses can't handle efficiently. Train travel costs more than buses, but provides comfort for multi-hour journeys to Lisbon, Porto, or other urban centers. Monthly commuter passes make train travel affordable for people who work in cities but prefer rural living, though this lifestyle requires significant time commitment to daily commuting. Seasonal transportation adjustments reflect agricultural rhythms and tourist patterns. Summer schedules include additional bus routes to beaches and tourist destinations, providing rural residents access to coastal recreation without requiring car ownership. Harvest seasons see increased informal transportation as people travel to help with agricultural work or attend related celebrations. The absence of ride-hailing services initially frustrates newcomers accustomed to instant transportation options, but eventually reveals advantages that urban convenience culture misses. Planning ahead becomes normal practice that reduces stress and creates opportunities for coordinated activities. Travel time becomes social time or contemplation time rather than wasted time. Transportation costs stay predictable because they're based on actual service provision rather than surge pricing algorithms. Emergency transportation works through community networks and official services that understand rural response requirements. Ambulances reach remote locations efficiently because drivers know local geography intimately. Neighbors provide transportation for medical appointments, family emergencies, and other urgent needs without expecting payment beyond reciprocal assistance when their own situations require help. Rural Portugal's natural environment provides recreational opportunities that cost nothing but deliver experiences worth thousands elsewhere, while also supporting lifestyles that integrate outdoor activities into daily routines rather than treating nature as weekend escape destinations. The Atlantic coastline stretches for hundreds of kilometers, with rural areas providing access to beaches that remain uncrowded because they're not served by tourist infrastructure. These aren't remote wilderness areas requiring expert navigation. They're accessible by local buses or short drives from villages, but they stay empty because guidebooks focus on developed resort areas. Swimming, surfing, and beach relaxation happen without entrance fees, parking charges, or crowds that make coastal recreation expensive and stressful elsewhere. Inland water recreation centers around rivers, lakes, and swimming holes that locals have used for generations but tourists never discover. River beaches throughout central Portugal provide freshwater swimming with surrounding landscapes that include oak forests, olive groves, and mountain views. These areas include basic facilities like picnic tables and waste disposal, maintained by local councils rather than commercial operators, so access costs nothing beyond transportation. Mountain hiking networks cross the entire country through well-marked trails that connect villages, historical sites, and natural landmarks. The Grande Rota, GR, long-distance paths provide multi-day hiking opportunities with overnight stops in rural accommodations that cost 15 to twice to 25 per night. Day hiking requires only basic gear and local transportation, but provides access to landscapes that range from coastal cliffs to mountain forests to river valleys. Foraging culture remains active in rural communities where people maintain knowledge about edible plants, mushrooms, and herbs that grow wild throughout Portuguese landscapes. This is not survival training or expensive wilderness education. It's practical knowledge passed down through families and shared among neighbors. Spring brings wild asparagus. Summer provides blackberries and figs. Autumn delivers chestnuts and mushrooms. Winter offers greens that supplement purchased groceries. Gardening becomes recreation that also reduces food costs when you have access to land and community knowledge about local growing conditions. Many rental properties include garden space, and communities maintain shared plots where newcomers can learn Portuguese agricultural techniques while growing their own vegetables. The climate allows year-round growing seasons for different crops, making gardening productive rather than merely decorative. Wildlife observation happens casually during daily activities rather than requiring special expeditions or expensive equipment. Rural Portugal supports populations of deer, wild boar, various bird species, and other animals that remain visible because hunting pressure stays moderate, and habitat destruction hasn't reached levels common elsewhere in Europe. Morning walks regularly include wildlife encounters that urban dwellers pay to experience during nature tours. Seasonal outdoor activities follow natural rhythms that provide different recreation options throughout the year. Spring brings wildflower blooms that turn entire landscapes into temporary gardens. Summer provides perfect conditions for water activities and outdoor dining. Autumn delivers harvest participation opportunities and comfortable temperatures for extended hiking. Winter offers clear mountain views and outdoor activities that don't require expensive equipment. Cork forest ecosystems, unique to Portugal and neighboring regions, provide walking environments unlike anywhere else in the world. These managed forests combine natural beauty with sustainable agriculture, creating landscapes where cork harvesting every 9 years maintains forest health while providing raw materials for international markets. Walking through cork forests costs nothing but provides education about sustainable forestry practices that balance economic activity with environmental conservation. Traditional outdoor sports like hunting and fishing remain accessible to rural residents through community connections and local knowledge rather than expensive guides and equipment. Hunting licenses cost reasonable amounts, and local hunters share knowledge about game management, safety practices, and traditional techniques. River and coastal fishing provide both recreation and food supplements using equipment that lasts for years rather than requiring constant upgrades. The overall outdoor recreation culture emphasizes participation over performance, community involvement over individual achievement, and practical benefits over pure entertainment. People spend time outdoors because it improves daily life quality, provides food and exercise, and maintains social connections, rather than because they're pursuing extreme experiences or photo opportunities for social media documentation. Portugal's public services deliver quality that would surprise Americans accustomed to associating government programs with inefficiency, long waits, and inadequate coverage. The reality of living in rural Portugal includes access to healthcare, education, and safety services that function well precisely because they're designed as public goods rather than profit centers. The National Health Service provides comprehensive medical care through local health centers that serve rural communities with surprising effectiveness. Basic medical appointments, routine checkups, Specialist medical care requires travel to larger towns or cities, but the public health system coordinates referrals and provides transportation assistance for people who need it. Mental health services include counseling and psychiatric care available through public health centers, addressing rural isolation and depression issues that affect many communities worldwide. Dental care isn't fully covered, but costs significantly less than private treatment elsewhere, with basic procedures available at public clinics for minimal fees. Educational services in rural areas face challenges related to declining youth populations, but communities maintain surprisingly good schools through regional cooperation and innovative programming. Small village schools often combine grade levels and use individualized instruction that provides better student-teacher ratios than urban systems achieve. Secondary education happens through regional schools that serve multiple communities, with transportation provided for students who live too far away to commute daily. Adult education and language training programs help newcomers integrate into local communities while providing continuing education opportunities for long-time residents. Portuguese language classes specifically designed for foreign residents happen regularly in most regions, often taught by retired teachers who volunteer their time. Computer literacy programs help older residents navigate digital services and stay connected with family members who live elsewhere. Public safety in rural Portugal operates through community policing approaches that emphasize prevention and local knowledge over enforcement and punishment. Crime rates stay extremely low because everyone knows everyone else, making theft and violence impractical as well as socially unacceptable. The GNR, Republican National Guard, maintains regular patrols and responds quickly to incidents, but most safety issues get resolved through community intervention before requiring official police involvement. Emergency services coordination works effectively despite rural geographic challenges because response networks understand local conditions and maintain equipment appropriate for rural emergencies. Fire department staff with volunteers who live locally and respond rapidly to calls involving house fires, medical emergencies, or accident response. Mountain rescue services handle hiking accidents and extreme weather incidents using personnel familiar with local terrain and weather patterns. Municipal services like waste collection, road maintenance, and utilities management function reliably because local governments understand their community's specific needs and limitations. Garbage collection happens regularly, even in remote areas. Recycling programs operate effectively, and road repairs get prioritized based on actual usage patterns rather than political considerations. Water and sewer systems work well because they're designed for local conditions rather than imported from urban engineering standards. Internet and telecommunications infrastructure receives substantial government investment that treats broadband access as essential public infrastructure. Rural areas often have better internet speeds than urban neighborhoods because recent installations use the latest technology rather than upgrading older systems. This connectivity enables remote work, distance education, and communication with family members who live elsewhere, reducing rural isolation that historically limited rural living options. Social services support elderly residents, disabled community members, and families facing temporary difficulties through programs that combine government resources with community assistance. Home care services help older people remain independent in familiar surroundings rather than requiring institutional care. Disability services provide equipment and support that enable full community participation. Family assistance programs help with temporary financial difficulties without the bureaucratic complexity that characterizes similar programs elsewhere. The overall public service approach emphasizes local solutions to local problems, community involvement in service delivery, and integration between different government levels rather than top-down administration that ignores local conditions. This creates public services that actually serve the public effectively, while maintaining cost efficiency that makes comprehensive services possible within Portugal as national budget constraints. Obtaining legal residency in Portugal involves bureaucratic processes that seem complex initially but become manageable once you understand the logic behind documentary requirements and administrative procedures. The key is recognizing that Portuguese bureaucracy prioritizes thoroughness over speed, which creates predictable processes rather than arbitrary decisions. The D7 visa, designed for retirees and people with passive income, requires demonstrating monthly income of approximately $760 for individuals, with additional amounts for family members. This income can come from pensions, rental properties, investments, or other sources that don't require active employment in Portugal. Documentation requirements include bank statements, income verification, health insurance, criminal background checks, and proof of accommodation in Portugal. Digital nomad visas, D8, target remote workers and freelancers who earn income from clients outside Portugal. Income requirements are higher, around $3,180 monthly, but the visa allows employment-based income rather than just passive sources. This option works for people whose careers can continue remotely while living in Portugal, though it requires proving stable income from established business relationships. The application process involves multiple steps that benefit from careful preparation and realistic time expectations. Initial applications happen at Portuguese consulates in your home country, requiring appointments that may be scheduled weeks in advance. Document preparation takes time because many papers require official translations, notarization, and apostille certifications that validate authenticity across international borders. Processing times vary significantly based on consulate workload and application completeness. Complete applications with all required documentation typically process within 2 to 3 months, while incomplete submissions face delays and requests for additional information. Planning for extended timelines reduces stress and allows flexibility in travel and housing arrangements. Once approved, temporary residence permits allow legal residence but require renewal after initial periods. The renewal process involves demonstrating continued compliance with visa requirements, including income maintenance and tax obligations. After 5 years of legal residence, permanent residency becomes available, providing long-term security and simplified administrative requirements. Tax obligations for Portuguese residents involve understanding both Portuguese tax law and potential obligations in your country of origin. Portugal offers favorable tax treatment for foreign pensions and investment income through various programs, but tax planning requires professional advice because individual situations vary significantly. The NHR, non-habitual resident, tax regime provides substantial tax advantages for new residents during their first 10 years in Portugal. Banking and financial services require establishing Portuguese bank accounts, which involves presenting residence documentation and proof of income. Portuguese banks offer services specifically designed for foreign residents, including English-language customer service and assistance with understanding local financial systems. Credit card and payment systems work similarly to other European countries, with widespread acceptance of international cards. Property purchase by foreign residents involves legal processes that protect buyer rights while ensuring compliance with Portuguese property law. Real estate transactions require legal representation, property inspections, and title verification that prevent common problems affecting international property buyers. Property ownership provides additional residency pathway options and long-term investment security. Healthcare registration happens automatically with legal residency status, providing access to public health services without additional fees or insurance requirements. Private health insurance remains available for people who prefer private medical care or want additional coverage beyond public services. Local integration support varies by region, but often includes language classes, cultural orientation programs, and assistance with administrative procedures. Many municipalities actively encourage foreign residents and provide services that help newcomers understand local customs, business practices, and community involvement opportunities. The overall bureaucratic experience reflects Portuguese cultural values that prioritize careful procedures, thorough documentation, and personal interaction over automated systems. This means processes take time, but usually work correctly when completed properly, and local officials generally provide helpful guidance when approached respectfully and with reasonable expectations about timing and requirements. After spending months researching and documenting life in rural Portugal, the most striking discovery isn't the low cost of living or beautiful landscapes. It's the philosophy that emerges when communities prioritize quality of life over economic growth, human connections over efficiency, and sustainable practices over short-term profits. Portuguese rural culture has accidentally created a lifestyle laboratory where principles that urban wellness experts charge thousands to teach happen naturally through community structure and economic necessity. Slow food isn't a movement. It's how people eat when their food comes from local sources. Mindfulness isn't a practice. It's what happens when daily life includes regular social interaction and connection to natural rhythms. Work-life balance isn't a goal. It's automatic when living costs stay manageable and community support systems reduce individual stress. The economic lessons extend far beyond Portugal's borders. Rural Portuguese communities demonstrate that prosperity does not require high incomes when basic needs cost reasonable amounts, and communities provide mutual support that reduces individual financial pressure. Healthcare works when it's designed as public service rather than profit opportunity. Education succeeds when it serves community needs rather than standardized metrics. Transportation functions when it prioritizes accessibility over speed. But perhaps most importantly, rural Portugal proves that modern technology can enhance traditional lifestyles rather than replacing them entirely. High-speed internet enables remote work and global communication, while people maintain local connections and community involvement. Solar energy and efficient appliances reduce environmental impact while preserving architectural heritage. Modern medical care combines with traditional knowledge about nutrition and physical activity. The people you've met in this story, Maria with her $800 pension, the baker who starts work at 4 a.m., the neighbors who share harvests and help with repairs, aren't characters in some nostalgic fantasy about simpler times. They're real people who've figured out how to live well in 2025 without requiring massive incomes or sacrificing connections to community and environment. Their example challenges fundamental assumptions about what prosperity means, what security requires, and what happiness actually costs. They demonstrate that abundance can exist without excess, that security comes from community connections as much as bank accounts, and that happiness correlates more strongly with meaningful relationships and purposeful activity than with accumulated possessions or income levels. For anyone considering significant life changes, rural Portugal offers more than just affordable living. It provides a working example of alternative approaches to organizing society that prioritize human well-being over abstract economic metrics. Whether you move to Portugal or not, understanding how these communities work can inform decisions about where to live, how to spend time, and what to value in your own life. The postcard version of Portugal shows beautiful tiles and historic architecture. The reality reveals something more valuable. Communities that have maintained human-scale social organization, while adapting to modern conditions and welcoming newcomers who want to participate in something different from conventional urban or suburban lifestyles. Comment 3. If you're seriously considering making a similar move. Comment 7. If you think this lifestyle sounds too good to be true. And comment 5 if you're already planning your research trip to rural Portugal. Whatever you decide, remember that these communities exist because people chose to create them and continue choosing to maintain them. That choice remains available to anyone willing to prioritize community over convenience, relationships over efficiency, and long-term sustainability over short-term maximization. The only question is whether you're ready to live differently than you've been told you're supposed to live.